All right, let's talk about a company. A company so massive, so powerful, it makes Facebook look like a kid's lemonade stand. I'm talking about Tencent. Yes, Tencent. You might not know the name, but I guarantee you've touched something it owns. Do you play video games? It probably owns a piece of that. Do you use Reddit or Spotify? It's got its fingers in those pies too. This company is a digital octopus with tentacles wrapped around the entire globe, and at its heart is a deceptively cute logo, penguin. A penguin. That's like finding out the Death Star is run by a fluffy bunny rabbit. It's disarmingly adorable for a corporate behemoth that could buy a small country and still have enough left over for a fancy hat. Now, if you live outside of China, Tencent is like a ghost in the machine. It's the silent partner, the mysterious investor, the name in the fine print you never read. But inside China, it's not a ghost. It's the entire haunted house. It's the air people breathe, the money they spend, the way they talk to their grandma, and the way the government keeps an eye on them all. It's a story about a brilliant, shy founder, a relentless strategy of copying everything that moved, and a showdown with global giants that it somehow won. This isn't just a business story. It's a tale of ambition, control, and a digital empire that quietly took over the world while we were all busy watching cat videos. Which, incidentally, it probably has a stake in somewhere. The story of Tencent is a masterclass in how to become a tech god without having a single original idea at the start. I'm not even kidding. Their first smash hit was a blatant copy of an Israeli messaging app. It's like wanting to be the world's greatest chef and starting by perfectly microwaving a hot pocket. But here's the twist. They were so good at microwaving that they eventually built a Michelin restaurant. They took other people's ideas, polished them, added features nobody knew they wanted, and then unleashed them on 1 billion people. It's a business model that screams, why innovate when you can just imitate better? And it worked. Oh boy, did it work. So buckle up, because we are about to dive into the wild, weird, and frankly terrifying world of Tencent. We'll meet its founder, a man known as Pony Ma, who is about as flashy as a beige tablecloth, but arguably more powerful than Mark Zuckerberg. We'll see how this company fought off Microsoft, became the king of video games, and built an app that does literally everything. And we will explore the dark side of this convenience world where one company and one government knows everything you do. This is the story of the penguin that ate the internet. And trust me, it's a lot more dramatic than it sounds. Our story begins in 1998 in the bustling tech hub of Shenzhen, China. This is where we meet our protagonist, Ma Wating, better known as Pony Ma. Now, when you think of a tech billionaire, you probably picture someone like Elon Musk, who names his kids like Wi-Fi passwords. Pony Ma is the exact opposite. He's famously shy, intensely private, and looks more like an accountant who's just discovered a rounding error in your favor. But don't let the quiet demeanor fool you. Behind that placid exterior is a ruthless business mind that would make a shark on Wall Street look like a goldfish. He and his friends saw the internet was blowing up, and they wanted in. Their big idea? Well, it wasn't exactly idea. They saw a cool new instant messaging program from Israel called ICQ, which stood for ICQ. So, what did Pony Ma and his team call their new, nearly identical program? They called it OICQ, for Open ICQ. That's not inspiration, that's plagiarism with an extra letter. It was a total knockoff, but it had one killer feature. It was in Chinese. They hustled like their lives depended on it, because they did. The company was constantly on the verge of collapse. At one point, Pony Ma even had to pretend to be a girl online to chat with users and make the platform seem more popular. Yes, one of the world's most powerful tech titans started his career by catfishing his own customers. The problem was, OICQ was growing too fast. More users meant more server costs, and Tencent had no money. They were so broke they couldn't afford the servers needed to keep the lights on. Pony Ma went to every investor he could find, begging for cash. He was turned down again and again. Nobody thought a free messaging app could ever make money. They were trying to sell the company outright, but couldn't even find a buyer for a measly $60,000. They were desperate. The legend goes that they were just weeks away from shutting down when a South African investment firm named Naspers swooped in with a lifeline of $32 million. It would turn out to be the single greatest venture capital investment in human history. With cash in the bank, Tencent was saved. They were eventually sued by AOL, who had bought ICQ, and had to change the name of their product. So OICQ became simply QQ. And with that, the little penguin mascot was born. QQ wasn't just a chat app anymore. Tencent started adding features customizable avatars, games, blogs, avatars, games, blogs, avatars, games, blogs, virtual pets. They turned chatting into a universe. They weren't selling a product. They were selling a digital identity. And they figured out how to make money from it, selling virtual clothes for your avatar and DIP memberships for special features. It was genius. They had built their kingdom not on a revolutionary idea, but on a relentless, desperate hustle. By the early 2000s, Tencent's QQ was the undisputed king of chat in China, but a challenger was approaching. And this wasn't just any challenger. It was the 800-pound gorilla of the tech world, Microsoft. Bill Gates and company looked at China's booming internet market and thought, "We'll take that, thank you very much." They launched their own messaging service, MSN Messenger, in China. On paper, this should have been a massacre. MSN was a global product, backed by the richest software company on the planet. Tencent was still a scrappy local company that had recently been too broke to buy a server. This was David versus Goliath. If Goliath had a nuclear arsenal and David had a plastic spoon. Microsoft came in with the confidence of a global champion. They saw QQ as a toy for teenagers filled with silly avatars and goofy games. MSN, on the other hand, was for serious people. It was for professionals, for the white-collar workers in Shanghai and Beijing. It was clean, it was corporate. And it was corporate. And it was deeply, deeply boring. Microsoft assumed that as Chinese users grew up, they would naturally graduate from the childish QQ to the sophisticated MSN. This was a classic global corporation mistake, underestimating the local culture and assuming their product was universally superior. They treated the Chinese market like just another flag to plant on their world map. Tencent fought back not by competing on Microsoft's terms, but by doubling down on what made them unique. They understood something fundamental about their users that Microsoft didn't in China. The line between work and life is blurry. People didn't want a separate, sterile application for work. They wanted one platform where they could talk to their boss, their friends, and their crush, all while tending to their virtual pet. Tencent moved at lightning speed, rolling out new features every few weeks. They added things like offline file transfer, which was huge in a country with spotty internet. If you sent a file to a friend who was offline, QQ would hold it until they logged back on. MSN couldn't do that. The final nail in MSN's coffin was Tencent's deep integration into Chinese life. It wasn't just a program. It was a cultural phenomenon. QQ numbers became a form of identity, like a phone number or an email address. People put their QQ numbers on their business cards. Meanwhile, Microsoft was slow, bureaucratic, and completely out of touch. Any decision about the Chinese version of MSN had to go through headquarters in Redmond, Washington. By the time Microsoft approved a new feature, Tencent had already released 5. In the end, it wasn't even a contest. The little penguin didn't just beat the giant. It ran circles around it until it got dizzy and fell over. With Microsoft vanquished, Tencent had a clear path to total domination. And they achieved it with a strategy that was as simple as it was brutal: copy and conquer. The company's internal philosophy became legendary. If any startup in China came up with a cool new product, Tencent would approach them with an offer. Sell your company to us, or we will build an exact copy of your product and give it to our hundreds of millions of QQ users for free. It was a mafia-style offer you couldn't refuse. Most sold. The ones who didn't were crushed. Tencent became known as the graveyard of startups for a reason. They were a black hole that sucked in every good idea around them. This strategy extended to every corner of the digital world, especially gaming. Tencent saw the booming popularity of online games and decided they wanted to be the final boss. They didn't just want to make games. They wanted to own the entire industry. They started by licensing popular games from South Korea like Crossfire and Dungeon Fighter Online. Then, they used their massive QQ user base as a weapon. They put a button right inside the chat app saying, "Hey, want to play a game with all your friends? Click here." Millions did. They perfected the freemium model, where the game is free to play, but you can pay for cool weapons, special costumes, or an advantage over other players. It was like printing money. But their masterpiece of imitation came when an American studio called Riot Games released a little game called League of Legends. Tencent saw its potential and invested in Riot, eventually buying the company outright. Then, they saw another hit game, PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds, or PG. So what did they do? They invested in the parent company of PG, Bluehole. But they also had their own studio make a nearly identical mobile version, PUBG Mobile, which became a global sensation. They covered all their bases. Why pick a winner when you can just own all the horses in the race? This wasn't just business. It was building a digital fortress, brick by copied brick. This copy and conquer model wasn't limited to gaming. They saw the rise of group buying sites like Groupon, so they launched their own. They saw the potential of online payments, so they integrated a wallet into QQ. Every new digital trend was met with the same response: observe, copy, integrate, and dominate. They built a walled garden so vast and so feature-rich that users had no reason to ever leave. Your friends were there. Your games were there. Your friends were there. Your games were there. Your friends were there. Your games were there. Leaving Tencent's ecosystem would be like moving to a new city, where you know no one and have to learn a new language. They didn't just win the market. They became the market. Just when you thought Tencent couldn't get any bigger, they unleashed their ultimate weapon. In 2011, a small team inside the company, working in secret, developed a new mobile app. It was initially just a simple messaging app designed for the smartphone era. They called it Weigen in China, and its English name was WeChat. At first, it seemed like just another app, but it would soon become something much, much more. WeChat wasn't just an evolution of QQ, it was a revolution. It was destined to become the operating system for life in China. Honestly, it's hard to explain to someone outside of China just how dominant WeChat is. It's your wallet, your social network, your doctor's office, your taxi hailer, and your government ID, all rolled into one. WeChat's genius was in its relentless expansion of features. It started with messaging, then added moments. A feature that looked suspiciously like Facebook's newsfeed. Then came the real game changer, WeChat Pay. They launched it with a brilliant marketing gimmick tied to the Chinese New Year tradition of giving red envelopes filled with money. They let people send digital red envelopes to their friends and family. It exploded. Millions of people linked their bank accounts to WeChat overnight just to play the game. With that one move, they leapfrogged years of traditional banking and made mobile payments the default way to buy things in China, from a cup of coffee to a car. Today, life without WeChat in China is almost impossible. You use it to pay your utility bills, book a doctor's appointment, order food, scan a QR code to rent a bike, and even file for divorce in some cities. It has many programs, which are essentially apps within the app. So instead of downloading a separate app for an airline or a store, you just use their mini program inside WeChat. It's incredibly convenient. It's a seamless, all-in-one digital life. But here's the catch, and it's a big one. This incredible convenience comes at a staggering price. Your privacy. It's a seamless, all that would... Every location you check into is logged on Tencent servers. And this is where the story takes a darker turn. Because in China, a company as big as Tencent doesn't just answer to its shareholders, it answers to the Chinese Communist Party. All that data, your entire life, it's to the shareholders. I'll give you an example. Leaders told that one of the policy sends messages that contain politically sensitive keywords. Discussions about topics the government doesn't like can be automatically deleted. Your activities on WeChat can be monitored and, in some cases, used against you. It is both a marvel of technological convenience and a terrifyingly powerful tool of social control and surveillance. It's the ultimate double-edged sword and app that makes life easier while simultaneously making freedom more fragile. Having conquered China, Tencent set its sights on the rest of the world. But they knew their strategy of building a single super app like WeChat wouldn't work overseas. Americans and Europeans already had their own separate apps for messaging, payments, and social media. So, Tencent adopted a new strategy: if you can't beat them, buy them. Or, more accurately, buy a piece of them. The penguin put on its top hat and monocle and went on a global shopping spree, transforming from a product company into one of the world's most powerful investment firms. Its portfolio is a who's who of the digital world. And, honestly, you've probably used one of its investments today. Let's start with gaming, Tencent's crown jewel. They are, without a doubt, the biggest video game company in the world. It's not even close. They own Riot Games, the creator of League of Legends, 100%. They own Supercell, the Finnish company behind mobile hits like Clash of Clans and Brawl Stars. They have a 40% stake in Epic Games, the maker of Fortnite and the Unreal Engine, which powers thousands of other games. They own significant chunks of Activision Blizzard. Think Call of Duty and World of Warcraft. Ubisoft, which makes Assassin's Creed. And even From Software, the studio behind Elden Ring. They have their hands in basically every major gaming franchise on the planet. But their ambition didn't stop at gaming. They looked at every corner of Western tech and media and started writing checks. Do you listen to music on Spotify? Tencent owns a major stake. Do you browse memes on Reddit? Tencent is a significant investor. Do you use the messaging app Snapchat? Tencent owns a piece of its parent company, Snap Inc. They even invested in Hollywood, co-financing blockbuster movies like Wonder Woman, Top Gun, Maverick, and the Terminator franchise. Oh, and they even own a part of Tesla. Their strategy is to be the silent financial partner, quietly influencing the global digital ecosystem from behind the scenes. This quiet expansion has raised serious concerns around the world, especially in the United States. Lawmakers and privacy advocates worry about a company with close ties to the Chinese government owning pieces of critical Western infrastructure, from social media to entertainment. The fear is that Tencent could be pressured by Beijing to censor content or share user data from the companies it invests in. While Tencent insists its overseas investments are purely financial and that it doesn't interfere with their operations, the suspicion remains. The silent, global empire of the Penguin makes people nervous, wondering just how much influence an arm of the Chinese state has over their digital lives. For years, Tencent and other Chinese tech giants operated in a sort of digital Wild West. The government in Beijing was happy to let them grow into national champions, as long as they helped censor the internet and provided data when asked. It was a deal with the devil that made everyone rich. Pony Ma and his peers were treated like rock stars, symbols of China's modern economic miracle. But then, something shifted. The dragon, the Chinese government, woke up and decided its pet tech giants had gotten too big, too powerful, and maybe a little too arrogant for their own good. The golden age was over. The crackdown began in late 2020, not with Tencent, but with its arch-rival Alibaba and its flamboyant founder Jack Ma. After Ma publicly criticized Chinese regulators, the government abruptly canceled the massive IPO of his financial company, Ant Group. That was the warning shot. Soon after, the regulatory storm hit the entire tech sector. Beijing launched a series of antitrust investigations, passed new laws on data security, and declared war on what it called the disorderly expansion of capital. The message was clear. The party is in charge, not you tech billionaires. Your companies exist to serve the state, not the other way around. Tencent was hit hard. The government blocked a planned merger of two video game streaming sites it controlled, citing monopoly concerns. They imposed strict new rules on gaming, limiting the amount of time children under 18 children under 18 could play online games to just 3 hours a week. On Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays only. Saturdays and Sundays only. This was a direct attack on Tencent's biggest cash cow. Regulators also fined the company for past acquisitions and for not properly handling user data. The freewheeling era of copy and conquer was officially dead. Suddenly, Tencent had to ask for permission for everything it did. The impact was immediate and brutal. Tencent's stock price plummeted, wiping out hundreds of billions of dollars in value. The once unstoppable growth engine sputtered. Pony Ma, who had always kept a low profile, practically vanished from public view. Desperate to avoid the fate of Jack Ma, the government was reasserting its dominance, reminding the tech emperors that they were merely subjects in a much larger kingdom. The era of unchecked ambition was over, replaced by an era of fear, caution, and absolute obedience to the state. The Penguin had been put firmly back in its cage, albeit a very gilded one. Just as Tencent was reeling from the government crackdown, a new threat emerged. And this one came from a scrappy, fast-moving rival. That rival was ByteDance, the parent company of a little app you might have heard of called TikTok, or as it's known in China, Douyin. While Tencent had spent a decade building its impenetrable fortress, ByteDance had built a rocket ship. Its secret weapon was a recommendation algorithm so powerful and so addictive it felt like black magic. It didn't rely on your social network like WeChat. It just learned what you liked and fed you an endless personalized stream of short videos. It was digital crack, and it was taking over. In China, Douyin became a direct threat to Tencent's dominance over people's screen time. Every minute someone spent scrolling through videos on Douyin was a minute they weren't spending inside WeChat or playing a Tencent game. This was a war for attention, the most valuable currency on the internet. For the first time in years, Tencent was on the defensive. They were the slow-moving incumbent, the big established empire facing a nimble, disruptive challenger. They tried to fight back, of course. They launched their own short video feature inside WeChat called Channels, but it felt clunky and late to the party. It was like your dad trying to do a viral dance challenge. The effort is there, but it's just a bit awkward. The rivalry got ugly. Tencent allegedly blocked links to Douyin from being opened within its WeChat and QQ apps, a move that ByteDance publicly called monopolistic. It was a clash of two completely different philosophies. Tencent's power came from its closed ecosystem, a walled garden where it controlled everything. ByteDance's power came from its open algorithm, a free-for-all content machine that could reach anyone. The old gatekeeper was fighting the new king of content, and the king was winning. The rise of TikTok showed that even an empire as vast as Tencent's could have its walls breached. This battle is far from over. Tencent is still a behemoth with immense resources, and it's pouring money into its video efforts to catch up. But the rise of TikTok represents a fundamental shift in the digital landscape. It proved that a company could come out of nowhere and challenge the established order with a single killer feature. For Tencent, it was a harsh wake-up call. They were no longer the only predator in the jungle. There was a new, faster, and arguably more dangerous creature on the loose, and it was stealing their lunch. The old penguin had to learn some new tricks, and fast. So, where does this leave our penguin empire? Tencent today stands at a precarious crossroads, a titan of technology caught between two immense, opposing forces. On one side, you have the relentless pressure of global competition and innovation, embodied by rivals like TikTok. On the other, you have the iron fist of its own government, the Chinese Communist Party, which has made it crystal clear that the company's leash will be kept permanently short. Tencent is trapped. It's trapped in a golden cage of its own making, immensely profitable, incredibly powerful, but with its wings clipped, unable to fly freely. The biggest question is whether it can continue to grow or even survive. Under these conditions, the path forward is fraught with uncertainty. The company's old playbook of copy, conquer, and crush is no longer viable under the watchful eye of Beijing's antitrust regulators. Its ability to print money from gaming is now capped by strict government limits on playtime for its most enthusiastic customers. Its overseas expansion is viewed with increasing suspicion by foreign governments who see it as a potential proxy for the Chinese state. Every move Tencent makes, both at home and abroad, is now scrutinized, second-guessed, and fraught with political risk. The days of bold, aggressive expansion are over, replaced by a new era of cautious navigation and quiet compliance. Can Tencent reinvent itself? It's certainly trying. The company is now pouring billions into what it calls hard tech, semiconductors, artificial intelligence, and cloud computing. These are areas the Chinese government wants its national champions to focus on to help the country become self-reliant and compete with the United States. It's a pivot from the consumer-facing world of games and social media to the less glamorous but politically safer world of enterprise technology. It's a strategic retreat, a move to align its business goals completely with the national goals of the CCP. The wild penguin is trying to become a loyal workhorse. But the fundamental dilemma remains. Can a company truly innovate and compete on a global scale when it lives in constant fear of its own government? Can it attract the best and brightest talent when creativity is secondary to political obedience? Tencent's future is a grand, unfolding drama. It could successfully transform into a state-sanctioned technology utility, a stable but boring pillar of the Chinese economy. Or it could slowly crumble, unable to adapt to the new reality, a relic of a bygone era of unchecked digital capitalism. The penguin that ate the internet now finds itself in a precarious position, wondering if it one day become the main course. Make sure to like and subscribe for more videos like this.